All right, this is the one that I was really looking forward to sharing with you guys. This is some fun and new info for me to be bringing to you guys, and just put a little pin in this topic because you will be seeing this. This will be a return topic on the Deep Dive Project in the coming year. So this is an article that was published on wherepeteris.com, which is a website that's run by Mike Lewis. I have referred to his work in the past. He's a very busy writer. He writes a lot, and I've found numerous articles that have tied into things that I've been researching in the past. So I've been on his site before, and it's a pretty interesting one. If you're interested in reading up on topics like this, then it's a good place to go. And there's some interesting stuff here, but we're just going to start with this one article here because it's a perfect opportunity for me to tell you about someone that I'm going to be talking about more in the future. So this is a commentary piece published December 16th, 2025, Father Ripperger's Bizarre and Dangerous Views on Women, Part 1. Celebrity exorcist Father Chad Ripperger has become a prominent and authoritative voice in certain Catholic media circles, captivating large in-person and online audiences with his opinions on topics ranging from demonology to space aliens to Harry Potter. Let me know if you were raised cradle Catholic, if you were allowed to read Harry Potter growing up, because I remember that being like one of the hottest debates in the Catholic parental circles that my parents were in when I was growing up. And I was definitely not allowed to read Harry Potter on account of its, demonic nature and everything. Anyway, he is something of a religious guru to many of his followers, perhaps a Chuck Norris or Bruce Lee of traditional Catholicism, and an expert in spiritual warfare and theology. On the surface, he plays the part well. He presents himself with a tone of erudition and always has a ready response to any question posed to him, never missing a beat. He presents himself as a defender of tradition in an age of moral and cultural confusion, and his reputation as an exorcist lends his claims about sin, demons, curses, and deliverance an aura of credibility, which appeals to Catholics unsettled by world events and the state of contemporary culture. Well, all I can tell you is if you are a fan, do not sit down and start comparing notes on things that he has said, because the man is full of holes. But anyway, confidence is not fidelity, nor is it competence, and a clerical collar does not place a priest's public teaching beyond scrutiny. Thank you for saying that, Mike Lewis. I agree. Ripperger is currently promoting a documentary starring himself along with Timothy Gordon, What a Woman Is. Oh, God. Hosted on political pundit and Catholic convert Candace Owens' website. Of course. In the film's trailer and across multiple appearances on social media to discuss the film, including an appearance during production on Gordon's YouTube channel in January 2025 and another episode last week to celebrate the film's release, Ripperger offers a view of women and a framework for marriage that goes well beyond a sharp critique of modern feminism or the promotion of Christian married life. Ripperger's vision is strict authoritarianism, in which wives are bound to obey their husbands in everything but sin. His views are built on a suspicious anthropology of women, rigid theory of male dominance, and a spiritual warfare narrative that treats disagreement as a symptom of disorder, sometimes psychological, sometimes diabolical. Oh, and by the way, if you are struggling psychologically, he will not help you. But he will be happy to take your money and tell you that he's helping you. Allegedly. Like many of Ripperger's ideas, it is difficult to place his worldview in the Catholic tradition beyond a few carefully mined quotes. What's different about his views on women in marriage is that, unlike his beliefs on young earth creationism, generational spirits and curses, and Harry Potter, his understanding of patriarchy doesn't really map onto any fundamentalist Protestant models either. And it really, really doesn't at all. If you look him up and you do some reading around on his various websites and things, you will at some point stumble across a diagram that is kind of reminiscent of the diagram that the IBLP cult that the Duggars were a part of. You would see it used in their literature and stuff. I've seen YouTubers flash it up, which is why I know what it looks like. I was never a part of the IBLP or anything like that. But it's like the 3 or 4 different tiers of umbrellas, and the biggest tier is God, and then the second under that is the husband, and then under that it's the wife, and then under that it's this very tiered system of rights. Basically, you will find something that's way more like complex, but essentially the same thing if you do enough reading about Ripperger and look around online. Protestant fundamentalist models of patriarchy, such as Quiverful or the Promise Keepers movement, promoted by figures such as Bill Gothard and Doug Phillips, do emphasize male headship and wifely submission, but they at least attempt to cloak these demands in the language of male responsibility, sacrificial leadership, and slogans like women and children first. The worldview advanced by Ripperger and Gordon, however, lacks even this minimal rhetorical softening. Little is said about the husband's concrete moral duties, while considerable attention is paid to policing female resistance, warning against domination, and enforcing obedience as a matter of order rather than charity. What could go wrong? What emerges is a stark framework in which hierarchy functions less as a sacrifice for men and more as a disciplinary expectation imposed on women. What else is new? In the Gordon-Ripperger model, husbands must hold a standing right to final decision authority. Ripperger repeatedly claims that women's resistance to male authority is rooted in the curse of Eve, and says that demons exploit women to undermine men. In their banter, there are no warnings about men taking this authority too far or admonitions that husbands must sacrifice or lay down their lives for their wives. Instead, he hands would-be abusers a religious vocabulary for domination. This has the potential to train frightened Catholic women to confuse obedience with safety and to interpret abusive behavior from husbands as the result of their failure to obey. There's no has the potential to here. It's happening. It's real. It's happening. There are already frightened Catholic women who have confused obedience to their idiotic husbands with safety, that they have to do that. And that the abusive behavior that they are suffering from these pieces of shit are deserved and are a result of their failure. It's already happening. I grew up seeing it. It's already happening, Mike. It's already here. And Ripperger, for his part, is just the latest manifestation of these really repressive and harmful ideas, which are not new. None of this is new. In my past articles about Father Ripperger's troubling ideas, I did not respond directly to his views on women because I believed they deserved their own article. In the course of researching for this series, I realized that it will need more than one article. Ripperger does not treat feminism as one problem among many. He treats it as the decisive obstacle to moral and social stability. In the January video, he says, "This country will never get its footing and get solidified morally, spiritually, but even societally until feminism is properly addressed. There's no other way to do it." The definition of feminism used by Gordon and Ripperger is extraordinarily broad. At one point in the January video, Ripperger asserts, quote, "In fact, I find most trad women are just crypto-feminists, ultimately." Oh my gosh, this guy. Gordon immediately concurs, "Me too. We have talked about it. You said like 80%, and I was like, Father, it's like 95. Ripperger responds without hesitation, "Yeah, I was being generous. I was being generous." I'm sorry, I can't help it. I gotta do something to get through this or I'm gonna freaking lose it. My tolerance is pretty much gone for this guy and for the people that he associates with because I already know it all. I already know it all. But all in due time, my friends, all in due time, you will learn. What this exchange reveals is not rhetorical excess, but ideological scope. In their framework, feminism is not confined to explicit political advocacy or doctrinal dissent. It encompasses Catholics who embrace traditional aesthetics, traditional family structures, and even self-identified traditionalists, as long as women retain meaningful agency, judgment, or resistance within marriage. For Ripperger and Gordon, feminism becomes less a coherent ideology than a catch-all term for insufficient submission. According to Ripperger and Gordon, even the vast majority of today's trad wives aren't traditional enough, of course. The no true Scotsmans, you're never pure enough. You're never good enough. You're never sinless enough. You're never blameless enough. There are no perfect victims. In a Sensus Fidelium podcast interview last week, Ripperger made this logic explicit. He claimed that when a wife works outside the home and starts providing for herself and also providing for the family, it produces a kind of feminizing effect on men that takes a chink out of his armor. Oh my gosh. Men are not that fragile. I promise you. I promise you. And if they are, feeding into those fragilities is not going to be the solution. I can promise you that. A wife having an economic agency is not framed as a prudential arrangement, a shared discernment, or a response to concrete family needs, but as a spiritual and psychological threat to male identity and household order. Ripperger then raises the stakes. Feminism, in his telling, is not a complex modern phenomenon with differing approaches or a diverse movement with varied strengths and shortcomings. It is a replay of Genesis itself, directed by the evil one, all capitalized. In the same podcast, Ripperger asserts that Satan goes after Eve to undo Adam, and that the way Satan's going to destroy the family is by subverting the proper order within the context of the family. He goes on to describe feminism as rehashed communism and collapses ideological opponents into a single spiritualized enemy by claiming that communism and diabolic psychology are the same, adding bluntly, it's the same thing with the left. Wow. Tell me that you have lost all ability to intellectually, critically engage with a nuanced subject without telling me that you've lost all ability to do that. Holy shit, Batman. When these elements are combined, the result is a closed system, a single political diagnosis. Feminism, a spiritual warfare narrative, Satan's strategy, and a psychology of dissent. They're masters at psychologically getting to you, reinforce one another, and also further divide and scare and create discord between two groups that need to be working together right now more than ever, men and women. We need to be working together. We need to be appreciating each other's skills and abilities, what we bring to the table, and we need to be inviting everybody to that table for these conversations because, sorry to say, some big men with puffed up chests and some crusader tattoos are not going to be what delivers us into the golden age of utopia. It's never been, and it never will be. Within that system, disagreement cannot simply be disagreement. It becomes evidence of a disorder. Ripperger warns that critics are trying to convince believers that there's something psychologically wrong with you, then insists that their own positions demonstrate a lack of rational stability. And in his parish talk in Charlotte back in March of this year, Ripperger bluntly laid out the implications of the curse of Eve on women. When Adam and Eve fell, the punishment after the fall fit the crime that they committed. So what does this mean in the context of the woman when she ate the apple outside the proper dominion of her husband? It meant, therefore, that the punishment fit the crime. That meant that women after that, and Eve and all women after that, will strive to try and dominate their husband. And this is something that they have to work on. This kind of rhetoric is meant to condition people. It trains women to distrust their own perceptions, moral instincts, and experiences of harm before the conversation even begins. When a wife's resistance is pre-interpreted as spiritual defect, psychological instability, or demonic influence, the space for genuine discernment collapses. In such a framework, coercion can easily be called order, control masquerades as headship, and suffering silently through spousal abuse can be reframed as obedience. This is precisely why this theology is not merely wrong, but dangerous, because it supplies the conceptual architecture that can normalize, excuse, or even sanctify spousal abuse long before anyone ever uses that word. And not only can it allow spousal abuse to thrive, but it can also prevent people from accessing life-saving, life-changing care that they need. Because what happens if a woman is married to a man who doesn't believe in mental health care, doesn't believe like it's a fictitious thing that you have to have faith in, doesn't believe in depression, doesn't believe in anxiety, doesn't believe in something like postpartum depression, something that affects an astronomical number of mothers. Any symptoms that woman is having, could be having, will be treated as like something that she just needs to get under control, or at the worst could be perceived as some type of like demonic influence, because that is eventually where all of this leads. It's all about this spiritual battle with this demonic force and how we all have to be engaged in this spiritual battle. And there are all these different little steps and things that you have to follow in order to be sure that you're engaged in the proper way. That's where this all leads. And as sad as it is, there are so many stories about people who needed mental health care, needed to see a psychiatrist, needed to go to therapy. But instead of accessing those things, because their family didn't believe in it, they were instead sent off to have an exorcism that they didn't need. Or they were sent off to some camp to have their ideas converted to something a little bit more palatable. That has gotten people killed. Not once, not twice, not a dozen times. That's where all of this eventually leads. In the interest of time, I'm not going to read this last bit of the article. He talks about the implications. I just talked about the implications. You can go and read his thoughts on the implications. Link the article down below. And I'll be keeping my eyes peeled for part 2. And if I catch it when it comes out, I'll be sure to save it for a Newsroom Analysis. But I figured, new year, time to put a new character on our radar. Father Chad Ripperger has made my list.